Hello, Susan. Hold on, I can't hear you if you're talking. Oh, it's because you're on mute. Hey, Alexis, can you hear me? Okay,
Yes, I
perfect.
can.
Okay.
Yay.
I other Alexis isn't on. I'm like the person, I don't know, kind of helping out on the other end of things for her, just so you know. So I'm Ben.
Yeah. Cool. Nice to meet you.
But I'm gonna keep myself muted other than that, unless you need me to do something.
Okay. Sounds good.
Would you like all of us to mute? Unless we're asking a question?
That would probably be best, just so we don't hear a bunch of feedback. And then
Right.
if you have something to say, you can either type it or unmute yourself to talk to Alexis directly.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Do you want to hear me?
We can hear you, Nancy.
All right,
We're basically, once 10:30-ish comes around here in the next minute or so, Alexis will have the floor, and then we're just gonna have everyone keep themselves muted unless like you have a question or something like that, so we don't hear a bunch of feedback.
Okay, how do I mute? I got unmuted. Now I got to mute.
There should be a microphone somewhere that you see, or
Ah,
on
right,
my
I got it.
screen on the right, it says like mute me.
I'll figure it.
Now, Ben, is there a reason we can't see you? Are you in bed or something?
No, I'm sitting in the conference room. I just don't have my camera on.
Okay. We'll focus on Alexis then, not you.
Perfect.
Oh man, what did I do?
Okay, so just so everyone knows it, when you do want to like mute yourself, so when you're looking at your screen at the bottom, it'll just say participants, like there's a little icon. If you click that, then it opens up on the right side of your screen, everyone's name, and at the bottom, it says you can mute yourself or unmute yourself. And I'm thinking this is probably everyone for now. So Alexis, if you want to, you can just introduce yourself and then just like take it from there.
Sounds good. And Ben, can you make it so I can share my screen? Okay.
Good question. So that you can share your screen. Let me try to take over as the host because I didn't even put myself as the host for this.
Gotcha.
Um,
And I guess while we have a second, I'll go ahead and introduce myself to you guys. It's nice to meet you. I am Alexis Supan. I am the dietitian with the Integrative and Lifestyle Medicine branch of the Wellness Center within the clinic. I've been a dietitian for going on 15 years now. And obviously today I'll be talking about different ways to hopefully help to make some dietary changes to ease up some arthritis pain. And we'll just talk about other ideas. Seems like we have a small group here, so I'll try and keep things a little bit short and sweet to give you guys plenty of time to ask questions. Feel free to pipe up if you think of something. Again, it's a smaller group, so I'm completely okay with that. If you think of something, feel free to kind of ask as we go along. All right, and I guess let me ask, first of all, anyone have any questions for me to start while we're figuring this out? No, all right. I'll just give it 1 second to see if we can pull up the slides. So it's not just me reading them to you guys. It's a little more interesting.
yeah, let me give 2 minutes. Alexis just sent me info so I could log in under her name. So I'm going to log out of Zoom and go back in under her name, and hopefully that'll put me as the host.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Alexis, is Ben fixing it so we'll have your face, the only one showing up, and
Yeah,
your
so
information?
yeah, I've got some slides. So I think he's
Yeah.
trying to fix it so I could share them so you guys could see all them.
Okay,
Well,
I didn't
that's
know
what
if that
you
was
see.
something I needed to change or not.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So hopefully we could get that sorted out, or else you guys will just be looking at me this whole time.
Okay, can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I am the host now. So let's see if I know how to do any of this. I did not know. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Beautiful. All right. Let me see. All right.
Oh, perfect.
Good. You guys can see my screen? Phenomenal. All right. So, as I mentioned, I'm Alexis, and today we'll be talking about nutrition and what it can do for you in terms of arthritis. So I'll talk briefly about kind of how our diet affects arthritis, why the two are linked at all. And then we'll get into which foods are actually beneficial, so which foods can help ease some pain, which foods we want to try and limit because they could actually worsen some issues that we have. And then we'll talk more specifically about tips on how to improve things. With nutrition, it's always really, really easy to talk about what we should do, what we're supposed to do. Not always so easy to put it in practice. So I want everyone to walk away today with some ideas that are very practical in how you could use these things and make some changes. All right, so how food affects arthritis. So the reason there is a link between what we're eating and arthritis and pain in general is because food can affect inflammation. When our inflammation in our body goes up, and when that kind of goes up chronically and throughout our body, that can create worse pain for us. So that inflammation factor is really the link between food and pain. So that's why we're going to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about your diets today. Food also can just improve overall joint health. So if you're having issues with your joints, getting the right foods in can really make sure you're maintaining joint health as best you can. And then one thing I always like to mention, because unfortunately with the news and the media today, we get lots of crazy reports and we see crazy headlines for all these like magic foods and how one thing can kind of change your life. Just a reminder, especially when it comes to something like arthritis, there's not one food that is some like magic cure-all. I have people show up all the time and tell me like, oh, I just bought elderberry juice. I've heard that like gets rid of all my pain. No food does that. When it comes to food and inflammation and pain in the body, it's all big picture. It's all, what does your diet look like as a whole? What is your lifestyle as a whole? So just keep that in mind. All right. So chronic inflammation, before I get into kind of foods and how they affect inflammation, I feel it's good to just give a quick overview of what chronic inflammation is. So we've all experienced inflammation in more acutely and in a way we can see. I'm sure everyone here has cut themselves at some point, injured themselves at one point, and then we all know what happens. Your body sends out signals to heal that cut, heal, where you got that injury, and that area swells up a little bit. That's good. Our body causes inflammation as a helpful way of treating injuries. But when we experience chronic inflammation, that can lead to worsening pain. People with arthritis, people with Alzheimer's, or several other medical conditions are actually at risk for experiencing chronic inflammation. And then our diet can actually worsen that or improve that. So for anyone with arthritis, chronic inflammation is just kind of a reality of the situation of arthritis. And that not only can lead to pain, but it can also lead to fatigue, depression, and GI upset or digestive issues. So if any of those other things are things you're dealing with, changing your diet to reduce inflammation can actually help those and kind of lessen those symptoms. All right, so for people with chronic inflammation, the best thing to do is follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So a diet that can really suppress those inflammatory responses of your body. Now, an anti-inflammatory diet is, and once I get into it, you'll all see, is in general just a pretty healthy, well-balanced diet. The other benefit of it is it helps us maintain a healthy weight. That is a big contributing factor to inflammation. People who are at a healthy weight and can sustain a healthy weight tend to experience a lot less of that chronic inflammation compared to someone who's obese. All right, so less inflammation, as I mentioned, means less pain for people. It also improves gut health and our absorption, which means that the foods you're eating, you're going to be getting in all those nutrients, getting in all the important vitamins, the omega-3 fats, all the things that are really good for us. Your absorption of those things will improve, and that, of course, just kind of has this snowball effect that keeps you improving. All right, and then one last note, an anti-inflammatory diet, putting arthritis and pain aside, is also good for us in numerous other ways. It reduces our risk for heart disease, stroke, diabetes, multiple cancers. It improves longevity. So it's really overall beneficial. All right. So what an anti-inflammatory diet is, I've got here the list of foods that help fight inflammation in the body. I'm sure it's not a surprise to most people here. It's just generally foods that we've talked about being healthy for, decades and decades. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, which are things like whole wheat bread or rolled oats, legumes, which are your beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, fatty fish like salmon, anchovies, sardines, mackerel, or trout are all excellent anti-inflammatory foods, and herbs and spices are all actually very beneficial when it comes to helping fight inflammation in the body. So for those of you a bit into nutrition or who just look at nutrition articles or try and stay up to date with things, I'm sure a lot of those foods sounded familiar to you, and you might be thinking, oh yes, that's the Mediterranean diet. Well, the Mediterranean diet is pretty much the most popular anti-inflammatory diet out there. I always like to share this because if you guys are ever looking for recipes, ever looking online for meal ideas, anything that says it's kind of on the Mediterranean diet or Mediterranean diet friendly. Oh, I'm in a room, so you guys are going to see the lights go out on me here because the clinic has this on a bit of a short timer. All right, so the Mediterranean diet, again, kind of hosts most of the anti-inflammatory foods. The diet is based on foods that were kind of traditionally eaten around the Mediterranean Sea area. I'll say this, the foods that were traditionally eaten there maybe like 40, 50 years ago. Unfortunately, this whole area has kind of become victims like America has with having a lot more processed foods. So the traditional foods of this area, those are going to be your nuts and seeds, your fruits and vegetables, and really big emphasis on deeply colored fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables with darker colors, more intense colors to them, have more antioxidants and therefore give us more benefits when we're eating them. Your whole grains, so again, something like a 100% whole wheat bread and herbs and spices and olive oil as the primary fat cooking source is what's recommended on the Mediterranean diet, again, as well as fatty fish. So you see there's just a ton of crossover between which foods help fight inflammation and which foods are encouraged on the Mediterranean diet. So if you're looking for recipes, that's the way to go. Look for some Mediterranean diet cookbooks or recipes online. Now that being said, so I mentioned we want to do lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains. There are some things that definitely stick out in terms of what can give us the most benefit. So following the Mediterranean diet is fantastic, but for anyone who's like, no, my pain's really bad, or I just want to go a little bit above and beyond, there are some specific foods that are great to include. Hopefully you guys, I guess it depends what size your screen is. Hopefully you could tell I did bold a few things on here, and those are the foods I'm going to talk about because they stick out a lot in terms of their benefits. So a colorful variety of vegetables is really good. You want to try and eat the rainbow in a weekly time. That helps make sure you get in a lot of the antioxidants and phytonutrients that are available to us. Antioxidants and phytonutrients help keep our cells young and healthy and help prevent damage to them. So that's why we want that big variety there. Now, specifically within vegetables, leafy green vegetables have a huge benefit. So this is things like kale, mustard greens, collard greens, spinach, arugula. Any of those guys are really excellent. And a good goal is to actually eat a cup of those every single day. Not just for the benefits in terms of fighting inflammation, but also for brain health. They can really help slow down or prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. So leafy greens are excellent. In terms of fighting inflammation, they give us a lot of antioxidants. And in terms of joint health, they provide us with a good amount of vitamin C. Vitamin C is essential for building collagen in our bodies and keeping those joints really healthy. So if you are someone who likes any of those leafy greens I brought up, I would think about ways that you could start including them, ideally on a daily basis. If that's just doing a little mixed green salad before your dinner every day, that's fantastic. If that's throwing spinach in your eggs in the morning, that's wonderful too. Again, all you need is a cup. So if you're doing something like cooked spinach, if you take a cup of fresh spinach and cook it down, that's barely anything. It's a couple bites of food and you're doing yourself a great service. All right. The next category down there is healthy fats. So healthy fats are, I would almost venture to say they're probably the most important thing for helping fight inflammation in the body. Healthy fats are fats which are good sources of omega-3s. Omega-3s are a really important fatty acid that really help bring down inflammation in the body. You could find them in any of the things I have listed there. Your fatty fish, avocados, extra virgin olive oil, or nuts and seeds. Specifically, chia seeds and flax seeds are really good omega-3 sources. So if you like either of those, and then walnuts and almonds are also pretty good as well. So if either of those are things you like and can see yourself snacking on or throwing on a salad, something like that, that's a wonderful way to get those in. The one I bolded here, fatty fish, I want to point out, so fatty fish is an excellent source of these omega-3s, which again, help us fight inflammation. But fatty fish specifically contains something called DHA, which is just one of the types of fats that we get when we eat something like salmon or sardines. DHA is very important when it comes to keeping our brain healthy and keeping our heart healthy. If you like fatty fish, if you like salmon or anchovies or sardines, even regular tuna packed in water is actually an okay source. So if you don't like those others I mentioned, but you're okay with tuna packed in water, that's not a bad way to go. When it comes to fatty fish, ideally you want to aim for eating 8 to 12 ounces a week. So if you want to think of that like twice a week, you have twice a week, you have a serving of 4 ounces of salmon, 4 to 6 ounces. That's perfect. That kind of puts you in the sweet spot of getting all the benefits from the fatty fish, which would be things like fighting inflammation and reducing your risk for dementia, while we're not going too high into the category of like massive fish consumption, which then could come with the risk of having too much mercury in the diet. So that 8 to 12 ounces really is a nice sweet spot. I know for me, the way I get this done is I buy salmon, I cook it up all at once. I eat a filet for dinner one day, and then the next day or day after that, I'll throw salmon on a salad for lunch. And that kind of fits that bill. So just something to think about. For those of you who are just like, oh my gosh, I hate salmon, that's disgusting. I'm not going to try and force it down. That's okay. You can supplement. They do make omega-3 supplements. I would run them by your doctor because dosages vary. And if you have any other medical issues, there's definitely some things they have to keep in mind. And there's things they'll want to factor in, but they do make supplements with that give you your omega-3s. And if anyone in here is vegan or likes to avoid those animal products, they do actually make some really good omega-3 supplements that have that good DHA from algae, because algae is the one other really good source of that DHA fat. So something to think about, regardless of kind of your dietary preferences, you are able to get that in and get the benefits of it. All right, and then one other thing on here under herbs is garlic. I should have onions under there too, because they're very similar in what they do for us. But garlic and onions are two very, very beneficial things when it comes to bringing down inflammation in the body. And this goes for any form of them. So this doesn't, necessarily mean you have to have fresh raw garlic or fresh raw onions. They could be fresh, they could be cooked. It could be powdered as well. Adding things like garlic powder or onion powder will give you all the same antioxidants and same benefits that using fresh garlic would. Two things I'll actually mention because of the time of year it is. One is, if anyone is a gardener, now is the time of year to shove some garlic bulbs in the ground, and then you will have plenty of garlic next year. So if you like garlic, we're kind of right in the sweet spot of the season that you want to plant your garlic now. If that actually sounds appealing to you and you haven't done it before, just hop on YouTube, search planting garlic, and you'll see it's the easiest thing under the sun. You essentially just like shove the bulbs in the ground and then you're good to go for next year. So that's one thing to keep in mind when it comes to garlic. And then as I mentioned with the powders, if you're doing garlic powder or onion powder, they're fantastic. They're very good, very healthy for you. But most spices lose their potency after about 6 months. It's not that it completely disappears, but it does start to deteriorate. So after 6 months of having a spice, it's going to be kind of less beneficial in regards to the antioxidants it's giving us. Because of this, I encourage you to kind of go through your cabinets, If you have any spices, if you're anything like the house I grew up in, me and my parents, you might have spices that are like 10 years old, possibly older than that. No judgment here, I've been there. But just know if you want to hold on to them, by all means do it. But in terms of the health benefits, there's not going to be much left in those spices. All right, and then I've got a list of other beneficial spices at the bottom here. Cinnamon, black pepper, turmeric, cloves, chili, cayenne. These are all spices known for their antioxidant properties. I will mention though, there's not a spice on the planet I would ever say isn't beneficial, unless it specifically bothers you or bothers your system. So like cayenne, for example, way too spicy for some people, upsets their digestion. Of course, if a spice bothers you, avoid it. But if you like some of these spices, always think about when you're cooking, can you add a little bit more of these spices? Or can you kind of maybe even do something like a tea that has cinnamon in it to boost the amount of spices coming in the day? The more the merrier when it comes to these things, because those antioxidants you're getting from them. Now, turmeric's the one I bolded here because turmeric's really known for its anti-inflammatory properties. Again, this is a spice where if you like to cook with it, if you like the taste of it, it's great. You could add it to chicken or other dishes you're making. If not, this does come in the form of a supplement. So you could keep your eye out for that or ask your doctor what they think about you adding that in to help maybe ease some arthritis pain and lessen your inflammation. Any questions for me about any of these? All right, so moving on. So the inflammatory foods, this part's always tough. I always like to focus on the foods that are good, that we want to include lots of, but I'd be doing everyone a disservice if I didn't mention the foods that can be actively making arthritis pain or actively making inflammation worse. So there are some foods in our diet that cause inflammation, that actively worsen our inflammation levels. Again, as I said, if you have arthritis, your body is already going to be in a state of being very susceptible and experiencing some chronic inflammation. These foods can then make that worse. They can really exacerbate the problem. So foods that exacerbate that problem: sugar, refined carbohydrates, fried foods, processed meats and high-fat meats, and processed foods. Now, I know a lot of those terms are terms that get thrown around all the time in news articles and media, from doctors even. And I know a lot of people, a lot of my patients are like, I don't even know what you're really talking about when you bring that up. Well, you know, when you say processed foods, it can sound just so generic that we don't really know how to specify it. So I just want to do a quick overview of what we actually mean when we throw out those terms, so you guys can kind of get an idea of which foods are possibly not so beneficial for you, which foods you want to cut back on if you have too many of them in your diet. So when it comes to the refined carbohydrates, for this, just think of your white products. So a refined carbohydrate is essentially a grain, so something like whole wheat, for example, that was very highly processed in a factory and essentially removed of all of the good stuff. When they process or when they refine these carbohydrates, these grains, they take away all the fiber, which is good for us because it's really filling and helps keep our GI system healthy. They also get rid of a lot of the nutrients in there, a lot of the vitamins, a lot of the minerals, just because that's how the process works. It's not that they're intentionally getting rid of magnesium in foods. It's just when they refine that product, when they take whole wheat flour and refine it into white flour, we lose a lot of those good things. So of course, most people, your brain goes to like, okay, that's the difference between white bread and whole wheat bread, or white rice and brown rice, which is true. Those white breads and white rices are the refined products, but you also kind of want to expand your thought process to anything else in your diet that has white flour. Because I have a lot of people tell me like, oh no, I'm fine there, I eat whole wheat bread, without realizing that they often use flour or tortilla wraps made from white flour, or eat crackers or pretzels or pancakes or waffles, all things typically made from white flour, or pizza. Of course, we all know if you go out for pizza, they're never putting it on a whole wheat crust. I think unless you're at Whole Foods, they will do that sometimes. So these are the foods that you want to think about kind of as a whole in your diet. And just start to think about, you know, where can you make swaps and get in some whole grains instead? So again, trying to follow those Mediterranean diet guidelines. So as I mentioned, for pizza, you can get whole wheat pizza dough, pizza crust. So doing something like making a pizza at home on whole wheat crust can be massively beneficial and just a big shift from the classic pizza you get out that's made with a bunch of refined white flour. All right, and then added sugars. So sugar is probably the #1 inflammatory food in our diet. It really is the worst. And unfortunately, we have a massive, massive sugar problem in America. We have started adding sugar to everything. The average, I think it's all women here, yes. So just so you guys know, the average woman the general health recommendations is we should try and stick to 24 grams of added sugar or less a day. That's the goal. If you're staying under there, so it's not that you can't have a lick of added sugar in your diet, but the goal is to try and stick under 24 grams. That's the equivalent of 6 teaspoons in a day. So, you can have a bit of sugar in your diet, no problem. Now, the problem is 6 teaspoons is what's recommended. Normal for your average American, unfortunately, is 22 to 30 teaspoons of added sugar a day. So we kind of blow out of the water what we should all be around. Again, they just add lots of sugars to our products. So added sugar can come in the more obvious forms: cake, cookies, granola bars, things that we actively think of as sweet. And again, having a little bit of those things when you have a sweet tooth, absolutely no problem. It's all about just kind of controlling the portions and making sure you're just doing it kind of once in a while. Now, where I encourage everyone to be a bit more cautious, because of course we're all going to have sweets when we want a sweet, when it's a celebration, something like that, or we just have a big taste for it. Having those things is okay. What you really want to do is kind of critically look at your diet on a day-to-day basis. Like, what's your normal routine? And see if you have any of these really high sugar condiments or drinks in there, because this is where most people get in lots of their sugar. And this is where it's one of the easier areas to cut some out. So if you're drinking sweet tea, if you're drinking sweetened coffees, pops, sports drinks like Gatorade or energy drinks or fruit juice, and it doesn't matter if it's fresh fruit juice or just like juicy juice, something like that, all of those things are just a big influx of sugar into our body. So those are things we want to try and cut back on and limit a bit. Barbecue sauces, ketchup, honey mustard, teriyaki, also big culprits of sugar. Best thing to do is when you're at home, check your labels, or when you're at the grocery store and buying condiments next time, always take a peek at the label and look at the added sugars on there. Try and get in that habit. That way you could really help decrease the amount of sugar coming in. Perfect example, and this is perfect example where I sort of messed up, if you want to call it that. My husband and I got a new salad dressing from Aldi's the other day, and I think it was like a Greek vinaigrette. I've had Greek vinaigrette before. I never think of it as something sweet, so I didn't even think to look at the label. Lo and behold, we get home, we make a salad with our dinner. Both of us, very first bite, we're like, oh my God, that is so sweet. Like, could not believe how sweet it was. It was okay, but it was kind of shocking. I expected it to just be sort of like vinegar and oil. I go ahead, I look at the label. Second ingredient on there is sugar, 6 grams of added sugar per serving. And that's just for me trying to have a salad. So really start to be critical, looking at all those different condiments that you have. Just do some comparing. Next time you're in the grocery store, if you pick up a salad dressing and it sounds good, but it's got tons of sugar in there, put it back, look at another one. See if you find one that's got just either no added sugar or 1 or 2 grams, which can be pretty normal. All right. So, talking about labels, I have this up here for 2 reasons. One, because I just wanted to point out to everyone, so this is what the modern labels look like now. So as you see, they have our added sugars specifically written under total sugars now. So companies have to isolate how many added sugars they've put in their foods. As you can see, 2 tablespoons. 2 tablespoons is a serving. This is always the first place you want to look if you're looking at a nutrition label. 2 tablespoons is a serving of this food. And every 2 tablespoons you eat gives you 16 grams of added sugar. Now, as I mentioned, for women, we want to stay under 24 grams a day. Oh, I guess while I'm here, because I'm sure people have friends and partners, If you're curious, men, very unfair, but men get up to 36 grams of added sugar a day. That's considered healthy for them. It's unfair, but what can you do? So if anyone, has a partner, brother, friend they want to share that with, then just know
I'll
that
take
that's
it.
their number. Say that again.
I'll take it.
There you go,
36
Ben.
grams.
Get your extra sugar in. All right. So anywho, as you see, if you eat 2 tablespoons of this food, you get 16 grams of added sugar. So for us women, we are 2/3 on the way for total what we're supposed to have in a day, or try and stay under in a day. Now, does anyone have any guesses what this could be? What we could eat that gives you 16 grams of added sugars in just 2 tablespoons?
Sugar.
So not quite sugar, not just plain sugar. It's a good guess though for how high it is. Let me add in one more clue. So here are the ingredients. Hopefully you guys can see them. I know for me it's a little cut off, but it's high fructose corn syrup, vinegar, tomato paste, pineapple juice, some spices in there, corn syrup. It's got like 4 different names for sugar in here. Anyone have any ideas now what it could be? All right, I'm giving it away, unless anyone wants to take a guess. It's Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. So the reason I share this, again, is just to reiterate where some of these added sugars sneak in. I have people tell me all the time, like, oh, sugar's not a problem, I don't have a sweet tooth. And then when they start to tell me what they actually have in the day, their sugar intake is, 3 times what it should be. From little things like this, from having this with their chicken and a granola bar and maybe some juice. So just be mindful, check those labels. All right, a few of the other inflammatory foods out there. So as I mentioned, processed foods is one. This is a difficult one to kind of quantify because there are some foods out there that are technically considered processed that really aren't too bad. And there's some out there that even seem healthy, but they're pretty bad for us. In general, the way I describe it, and the way is always easiest for me to think about, is think of a processed food as anything that wasn't around, let's say 200 years ago, 150 years ago. If it was around back then, it's probably not a processed food. Anything that's kind of modern day made is considered a processed food. Now, again, within that, some of those things are going to be much worse. Some of those things are going to be much better. A good guideline is to go for foods with less ingredients. Sticking to 5 ingredients or less is a really great goal to have, a pretty ambitious one, but that helps you avoid the overly processed foods. I've got some examples up here. A few I specifically put up there just because a lot of us can fall into the trap of foods that are marketed as looking healthy. We, associate, oh, that should be better for me. Things like your veggie straws or your broccoli tots. Those are really advertised as being healthy just because of marketing, to be honest. But also, even though they have healthier things in them, they're still very highly processed. Still lots of extra stuff added in there. The good parts of those foods have been highly processed. Like veggie straws say they are made with tomatoes. They barely have any tomato in there. They freeze dry some tomatoes, sprinkle in some tomato powder to make things red and call it a tomato. So be careful with the processed foods. When in doubt, just always try and incorporate whole foods in your diet. When you're thinking about snacks, think about, can I get some baby carrots? Can I get some apples? Things like that. Things that are just whole and natural, always the way to go in terms of lessening inflammation. Processed meats are another big inflammatory food for us. Those are going to be any meat that's had something done to it. Bacon, sausage, kielbasa, bratwurst, pepperoni, things that have been treated, cured in one way or another, had salt or seasonings added, anything like that. Those are foods it's best to limit, not just for pain, not just for arthritis and inflammation, but for a whole host of reasons in terms of brain health, in terms of heart health, in terms of blood pressure. These are all foods that are not so great for us. So try and keep them if these are foods you love, which that puts me in that category. If these are foods you love, it's okay to have some, just really try and keep it to more special occasion stuff. Don't have, kielbasa 3 lunches a week. Don't buy a whole pack that you go through in a week's time. Try and keep it to more special occasions, like when you're, at a friend's house and they're grilling out and they have bratwurst. Keep it to once in a while stuff, and it's a lot better for you. And then as far as just regular meats go, like non-processed meats, the best thing to do is really try and lean heavily on things like fish, shellfish, chicken breast, and turkey breast. Meats that are high in fat, which would be things like chicken wings, most cuts of beef, most cuts of pork. Foods that are high in saturated fat like that can increase our inflammation as well. So when it comes to those proteins, really lean is always the way to go. Fish and poultry are a good default for that, but really lean cuts of beef or really lean cuts of pork, like a pork tenderloin, are better options as well. And then lastly, no surprise here, fried foods tend to be inflammatory for us. So of course, anything deep fried, any food you come across that says it's breaded is what you want to consider a fried food. I have a lot of people ask me about things like mozzarella sticks because you buy them frozen and you put them in a toaster. That is still a fried food because it has been breaded and fried. It just all happened beforehand. All right, so just a few ideas up here. So I'm a big advocate of slowly trying to make changes that you can actually sustain. You don't want to, turn off your Zoom camera after this video and rip through your kitchen and throw out all the bad stuff. You just want to start to think about, okay, what are some smart changes I could make, some healthy swaps? So I have this list up here for you guys of different things to consider. If you see one or two things in that first column that you do, let's say you fry foods a bit often at home, try air frying more or roasting foods more. If you usually do a lot of refined carbs, like using white rice or regular pasta, try out some of the other whole grain options. They make really great whole wheat and chickpea-based pastas now. There's a lot in terms of whole grains to try out there. Different types of whole grains like quinoa, farro, bulgur, they all taste a little bit different. Excellent things to test out though. So again, do this slowly over time. Next time you're at the grocery store, maybe get, one or two new things, test them out, see if you like them. And hopefully you could start replacing maybe some not so healthy habits, like drinking a pop, with doing something like drinking a green tea or black tea if you need an energy kick, or just like a peppermint tea if you just want something that tastes different from water. All right. And then the biggest, best lifestyle change anyone could make is committing to cooking at home more. Down here, I have a few cookbooks that I recommend. The two on the right, the 30-Minute Mediterranean and the Complete Mediterranean Cookbook, will give you tons of good anti-inflammatory recipes. Both awesome places to start. The two on the left are all just about cooking to make your food taste good. They are not specific to any diet. You will definitely find like recipes in salt, fat, acid, heat that you're gonna be like, this is not healthy. I don't know what she was talking about. But I always recommend those two books because, as we all know, we're more inclined to stick with things if food tastes good. If you're gonna make some changes to how you're eating, if you make those changes and the food you end up eating is boring and bland or just tastes really bad to you, probably not going to stick with it. You're probably going to quickly decide, I don't think this is really worth the benefit that I might get. So you want to make sure you can make your food taste good. Those first two cookbooks are excellent for helping people learn to be a home cook. And then, as I have listed up here, just some of the benefits of cooking more at home. We get to control what's going into our food. That usually means using less sodium, less sugar, less fat. We have a greater appreciation for what you eat. And really, if any of you guys have kids or grandkids or anyone you share meals with or would share meals with, it's such a nice way to kind of socialize with other people and something that's really great to share. You can pick healthier ingredients. So of course, restaurants are always trying to make money. That means they're not always going to be choosing foods optimal for health. Whereas if you're at home, you can choose the foods that are best for you. And then lastly, a few of our doctors say this, and it's something I always like to share because I have so many people who don't meal prep or meal plan or cook for themselves just because they almost think eating out could be an act of self-care. They're treating themselves to, DoorDash or whatever it might be. Truly, the act of self-care is meal prepping and cooking and giving yourself healthy, good foods that nourish your body and will lessen your pain. So really remind yourself of that, that really is the best way to express self-care and take care of yourself. One question I always get from people, what about gluten or dairy? Do I need to cut those out? I will give you guys the quick answer because I could probably do a whole presentation on this part alone. The quick answer is for every single person in here, the answer is different. Some of you may greatly benefit from cutting out gluten and dairy. Some of you may get absolutely no benefit from cutting out gluten and dairy. It is a very individual thing because it's just based on how your body processes gluten. And so gluten, just so you know, is the protein that's found in wheat, barley, and rye. And then dairy, we all know what it is. If you suspect either of these might cause a problem for you, if you eat dairy once in a while and your stomach feels upset, or if you experience some brain fog and fatigue, gluten might be an issue for you. The one way to know if you'll benefit from either of these things is to get rid of them from your diet for about a month and see if you notice a difference in how you feel. So if you want to experiment with that, that's definitely something you could do. I encourage you to test it out for a little bit to see if you notice a difference. Don't feel like you absolutely have to get rid of them though. You'll see things online, you'll see things in the news that say, you know, a lot of people have gluten sensitivity or intolerance. It's all individual. So test it out on your own if you do suspect you have an issue here. And if you do need help with that, if you don't know where to start, you could always come see me, virtual or in person with the clinic. All right, and then just a few other tips for healthy lifestyle changes. Best thing to do for most people is try and keep a lot of unhealthy foods out of the house, you know, when that temptation's around. The way I put it to people is you could have amazing willpower 23.5 hours a day, but if you have moments of weakness, moments where you're tired and you are surrounded by a lot of unhealthy foods, of course, it's going to be really too easy to go ahead and grab those. So try and keep a healthy home environment. That really can kind of encourage you to stick with smart meals. And then stay well hydrated. A lot of people don't stay hydrated enough, and then their body's constantly signaling them to drink or put things in their, really just put things in your mouth. So we can confuse that with feelings of hunger often. When we get thirsty, we tend to not know if we're thirsty or hungry. And that, of course, encourages snacking and obviously on convenience foods a lot of the time. Plan out your healthy meals. Healthy meals don't happen on accident. They usually take a little bit of planning, a little bit of prep work. So make sure to try to incorporate some of these changes that you're sitting down at least a couple of days ahead of time and thinking, you know, what am I going to do for my next few meals, you know, next few lunches, next few dinners. And then also make meal prep enjoyable. You know, a lot of people I know don't like to meal prep because they're like, oh, it's such a chore. I hate it. It's so much work. Set yourself up at a table if you've got a lot of joint pain and do better sitting. Set yourself up at a table with the foods that you want to prep for the week and play some music, play an audiobook, or do this with other members of your household. For me and my husband, this is always our nice time of the week where we totally get to like turn off the, well, not turn off the phones, but leave the phones in the other room, no TV. And it's just us sitting there prepping our meals for the week. And it's really a nice social time for each of us. Most of the time. Sometimes we both just want to zone out and we listen to our own like podcasts or audiobooks. So it varies a little bit, but there are ways to make it a little bit more enjoyable. So keep that in mind. And then always be mindful while you're eating. We tend to eat in distracted environments a lot. Slowing down and appreciating the food and what you're eating tends to make us want higher quality foods, better foods for us. It really makes us appreciate things like fresh fruits and vegetables and good quality stuff. So always try and be present while you're eating. All right. I kind of put some of these up there with the swaps I talked about earlier. But again, I will just mention, pick a couple like specific ways you can make some good changes here. Don't feel like you have to do some whole overhaul. Making a few of these changes is enough to start to really benefit your body and lessen that inflammation and lessen that pain. So if you see anything on here that sticks out, that makes you think, you know what, oh, okay, I can start doing that, go with that. See if you can really implement that and stick to that for the next month. So let's say you like salmon, but you usually only eat it once or twice a month. See if you could start telling yourself, you know, every week when you go grocery shopping, get that 8 ounces of salmon and make sure you plan out when you're going to have it in that following week. That's such a good way to really bump up those healthy fatty fish. And hopefully it's something that is tasty for you too. All right, and then lastly, I just want to mention, so I know I went over a lot because there's a lot to talk about with this, but hopefully you guys got some good notes. If anyone feels like you need a more specific plan, or you want to walk through, you know, what specific nutrition changes you want to do, or you have other medical issues you need to balance this with, I am always free. I am the dietitian, as I said, with the Wellness Center. So you guys are always free to make an appointment with me. You call that number on the bottom and that takes you to the Wellness Center. For anyone interested in cooking classes, or just becoming more comfortable in the kitchen, we do have 2 chefs who do culinary medicine group visits, or they do individual visits. So again, if you've got a lot of complex stuff and you're like, I don't know how to balance everything, you can see them for a one-on-one or join their group classes. They are fantastic. And then lastly, if you want to look really more at big picture stuff, please, I encourage everyone to talk with our doctors in lifestyle and integrative medicine. They are great for kind of helping everyone just make sure your lifestyle as a whole, everything as a whole, is pushing you in the right direction of overall health and longevity and really feeling good and feeling your best. So there's more available to you, but I think you guys are probably going to hear more talks on a lot of the other things offered at integrative and lifestyle medicine, like chiropractors and the acupuncturists. But I left those off because I think you guys are talking to them individually. All right, so that's a good chunk of what you need to know. I won't say everything you need to know because there's always more stuff to learn. But I hope you guys found that beneficial. I hope you guys all have a few ideas of different stuff you could do, changes you can make. Does anyone have any questions for me? Nope. All right. So it was really great talking to you guys. Again, our number's on the bottom there. If you're interested in any of the services, you could also just search Cleveland Clinic Wellness, and it'll come up with all the different services and everything that we give. Thank you so much for joining me. It was really nice talking to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
had a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. Good. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, thank you very
It is.
much.
Of course. All right.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, thank you again for taking your time and doing this for us. We really appreciate it.
Sure, of course. All right. Well, have a good
Great.
week, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.